Hey, thanks for listening to the Practicing Connection podcast. I'm Jessica, and my co-host Coral is here as well. Today, we're going to be talking about feedback and mentorship for skill growth. And Coral's going to be sharing a practice with us. Hi, Coral. How are you?
Hey, Jess, I'm doing well. Yeah, as I was preparing for this week's episode, I was reflecting really heavily on the role that mentorship has played in my own professional experience, like particularly most recently in scaling a business. And it's only been after several years of flying solo before I finally realized that I could save myself so much heartache and also have such a greater impact if I had sought support from a mentor, which is, I'm a couple years deep into a very formalized coaching and mentorship program, it's been wonderful. But it took me a while to get there. And yeah, wow, it's made such a difference, but it can be tough to ask for that level of support.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that perspective. It really does take courage to ask for feedback directly. I've been involved in several training and coaching programs where a big part of the program involved obtaining feedback. And, it's often helped me make changes, which a lot of people would expect, right? When you're getting feedback, a lot of people feel like, oh, well, that's about, changing and getting better. But I would say for me, even more so, it's helped me see strengths that I have that I didn't notice, but other people knew. Other people could see it, but I didn't notice them until someone started to point them out to me.
I love that. And that's such a perspective shift that I had as well, of help other people who are seeing us doing the thing or cultivating the skill or process or whatever it is that we're looking to elevate and hone. And they can often see things they are seeing it from a different perspective and helping us lean into the things that we're strong in and further hone those pieces, help level up the things, and then, maybe pivot a little bit. And we're actually going to get into that today. But yeah, a lot of people just think that feedback. Like, I don't want to ask people how,
Yeah, like, I already know. I'm so hard on myself. I already know how terrible I am. I don't need anyone else to tell me how terrible
to point it
I am.
out. Yeah. So this is definitely a different framework for perspective that is not just like, hey, you could really use some work on X, Y, and Z. It's about that really holistic perspective of receiving feedback or even developing a more formalized mentorship relationship if you so desired.
Well, before we move on, I'll just quick give a little bonus exercise here. One of the best questions that I was asked when I was trying to get feedback in one of these programs was they told me to ask, when I walk into a room, what shows up when I do? And people gave me feedback on that, and that was pretty interesting. It was pretty cool. But let's learn more about feedback and mentorship for skill growth. Coral, tell us a little bit about the practice that you're going to be sharing today and why you chose it.
Yeah, absolutely. So much of professional development really happens outside of these formal trainings and courses and conferences that we, do attend from time to time. But once you decide that you want to keep growing a skill or seeking it out and cultivating that, the real work is in weaving it into your day to day, not just in that, kind of finite space that we're learning about it or, kind of developing that brain awareness of it. And so feedback and mentorship are two of the most effective ways to do that. They give us outside perspective, accountability, encouragement, but also, as we already noted, asking for feedback or arranging mentorship, it can feel intimidating. It can also just feel like, I hate to say that, like a burden, but just kind of a heavier load to add to both our plate, but also to ask someone else who already is so busy to take on that level of guidance and mentorship. And so I wanted to share a really simple, structured practice that makes it very attainable, very easy to access, and hopefully just something that is a very approachable way to go about this.
Well, that sounds super useful. Let's walk through the practice.
Sure thing. So here's a practice that you can try next time you want to develop a skill more deeply in your workplace or professional space. The first step is, of course, choosing the right person. So think about someone who you have seen applying the skill or who interacts you in the context where you're trying to grow. And it doesn't have to be a supervisor. It can be a peer, a colleague, even someone that you support. And sometimes the end user perspective is actually the most helpful. So from there, once you've settled on this person, step 2 is or perhaps a little bit in tandem, using a simple framework in asking for feedback. And one that I have leveraged in the past, Jess, I think, in kind of our pre-show conversation, you mentioned that you've used this before with a slightly different spin. I've come to call it start, stop, continue. And here's how it works, just very straightforward. So this is asking, what's something new that I could start doing that would help me use the skill more effectively, or something of the sort, right? Number 2 here, stop. You can ask, what is, and this is, the question that you're asking of this person who is helping you along in this process. You could ask them, what is one thing I'm doing right now that might be getting in the way of progress? And then thirdly, continue. Ask, what am I already doing well that I should keep doing? So the reason I love this framework so specifically is that it makes feedback concrete and balanced. And you're not just hearing what needs fixing, you're also hearing what's already working, which is really important for motivation, but also just for that holistic perspective like we talked about. All right, so step 3 is reflecting and acting. Once you've gathered this feedback and had that input from your mentor, from your experience, write it down. Look for patterns and then choose one small doable action to try straight away. We actually talked about this in our prior episode last week about those just like bite-sized nugget actions that you can do rather than trying to, just change everything straight away. Just choose one thing in a very specific context and just try that in a very minute sense. Don't try to change everything at once. It can get a little overwhelming sometimes. So that's just the very ground floor asking for feedback. And it can be, multiple times over or kind of continuing sequence. It can also just be a one-off, like, hey, can we watch me do this thing and let me know what should I start doing, what should I stop, and what should I continue. If you have something that is a little bit meatier in nature or that may take more continual progress, more of a long term, you may want to explore mentorship. And a mentor does not have to be a formal role. It can be someone who's a step or two ahead of you in the skill you're developing. And when you're reaching out, you might say, I'm working on developing this skill and I really admire how you approach it. Would you be open to occasional check-ins or giving some advice as I keep practicing? And by and large, most people will simply be flattered that you asked and oftentimes are happy to share their experience.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Coral, in our pre-conversation before we started recording, I love the start, stop, continue framework. I've used it with groups in a totally different angle. It really does, though, in this context, it makes feedback less overwhelming for both the person asking and the person giving it.
100%. It just lowers the barrier, right? And so instead of, hey, can you give me some feedback? That can feel really huge, both to you and to the person that you're liaising with. And instead being very specific and giving 3 small buckets that person who's advising or supporting you can fill. It's just, it's a lot more straightforward and specific and just clear. There's clarity around it. And the mentorship element, if you choose to dig in a little bit deeper, it builds on that. And you can still continue using that start, stop, continue framework. And it just gives you that ongoing perspective and encouragement as you integrate your new skill into your daily work, continue to hone whatever practice it is that you're cultivating and leveling up what you're doing.
Awesome. Well, that is it for this episode. Thanks so much for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, click the share button in your podcast app to send it to a friend who might benefit. We'll be back next week with a new episode. Until then, keep practicing.
The Practicing Connection podcast is a production of OneOp and is supported by the National Institute of Food and Agriculture, U.S. Department of Agriculture, and the Office of Military Family Readiness Policy, U.S. Department of Defense, under award number 2023-48770-41333.